This is Ria. Welcome to Little Stories for Tiny People. Why does everything always seem to be new and improved, updated and fixed, state-of-the-art, cutting edge? What about familiar and timeless, cozy and comfortable? What about classic? I, for one, think we need more classic stuff. So I wrote this story. It's called Sleep Train Classic. Take it away, Brooke.
Remember, there are no pictures. You have to imagine them in your mind. You can imagine them however you want. Okay, here we go.
At the end of the school day, as Lambden struggled to stay awake, his eyes glazing over as Mr. Hoofendorf told the class about loom construction through history.
The first known loom was designed by Sheepton Kincaid. To our modern sensibilities, it would appear primitive, but in yesteryear it was seen as a technological wonder.
The bell rang, followed by an announcement over the loudspeaker.
Attention, students. I need your undivided attention regarding a prime opportunity. Love numbers, enjoy graphs. Odds are you should head on over to Math Club in room 27. Don't be square. Add yourself to the club today. I do hope some of you will take advantage of this winning opportunity. It's sure to be off the charts fun.
The sheep around Lambden rose from their seats to pack up. He remained seated, suddenly alert, struck by the message from the loudspeaker. Often, during school lessons over the years, he'd wondered, why is everything always about wool? The fact of it was driven home at that particular moment by Mr. Hoofendorf.
See you tomorrow, students. And don't forget your homework on the many varieties of wool fibers.
Lambden had been planning to head home and work on his toothpick tower, but he realized that Math Club might offer something he'd been wishing for years. That's it. He bolted up and gathered his things. Lambden practically skipped to room 27. He couldn't wait to talk about numbers, percentages, parabolas perhaps. It didn't matter much to him, just as long as it had nothing, absolutely nothing, to do with
wool yarn comes in skeins of 100 yards. If my friend Woolhelm gave me 332 skeins of yarn for my birthday, which in fact he did 3 years ago, how many yards of wool yarn would I have? Anyone?
10 minutes into Math Club, Lambden was itching to leave. To pass the time, he tapped a hoof under his desk until Hoofbin whispered,
Lambden, quit it, will ya? Now, moving on to something completely different. If I had a woolen blanket and I wanted to calculate the area of my woolen blanket.
Next, he started humming until Woltessa whispered,
Lambden, I can't hear Mr. Hoofwilder.
He decided to doodle. He rifled in his desk to find some paper. When he withdrew his hoof, he did have a paper envelope with his own name on it. Huh? Lambden glanced around to see if anyone was watching, but the handful of other students were focused on Mr. Hoofwilder, who was asking them to calculate the number of sheep needing to be sheared in order to create 48 woolen socks.
Keep in mind, these are mid-weight woolen socks with a bit of heft to them.
Lambden held the envelope out of sight, under the desk, and tore it open. Inside was a crisp card. His stomach did a flip. He could tell immediately by the card's styling and font who had sent it. The Sleep Crew. The Sleep Crew, the team behind the sleep train, a magical locomotive that promised a nighttime journey that both entertained and soothed its passengers to a restful night's slumber. Lambden loved it. He had a great deal of trouble falling asleep on his own, alone in his bed, his mind racing. All that changed a few years ago when he boarded the sleep train for the first time. But when the Sleep Crew bothered to communicate with Lambden, it usually meant they wanted him to board a different sleep vehicle, a ridiculous sleep vehicle, not his reliable favorite. As Math Club proceeded,
Mr. Hoofweiler, if my calculations are correct, you'd need 238 sheets.
Lambden studied the front of the card, considering its careful lettering. Could be anything. It could be a hot air balloon, or a helicopter, or some new invention. He sighed. There was no point sitting there wondering what secrets the card might hold. He opened the card, and...
Serious sleeper, listen to me.
Lambden snapped the card shut. For a moment, his drumming heartbeat drowned out everything. Then he noticed that Math Club had gone eerily silent. There was no chatter about how many skeins of wool yarn could fit into a wheelbarrow, or the volume of sheared wool needed to create a sweater. Lambden lifted his head. Every sheep, including Mr. Hoofwilder, was staring at him.
Lambden,
Mr. Hoofwilder said, knitting his woolen brows together.
is everything all right?
Yes, Lambden blurted. No. I think I need a drink from the water fountain.
By all means,
Mr. Hoofwilder said. Lambden grabbed his things and bolted for the door.
Now then, if my cousin had 17 pairs of woolen slippers, and my neighbor's dentist had 37...
In the hallway, Lambden did get a drink from the water fountain. He was awfully parched, but also alone in the empty hall. He reopened the card.
Serious sleeper, listen to me. A night of sweet dreaming is waiting for thee.
Good afternoon, Lambden.
The towering moose's voice came, tinny but clear, from the center of the card.
As you know, we at the Sleep Crew are committed to innovation. It is baked into the DNA of everything we do. In the last 3 years alone, we've won numerous awards, such as...
Reflexively, and without thinking it through, Lambden snapped the card shut. He couldn't stand listening to this sort of rambling nonsense. It occurred to him, only once it was closed, that he'd have to re-listen to the entire message in order to get to the point of it. You've got to be kidding me. Lambden looked up and down the hallway, but it was still, mercifully, empty. He reopened the card, determined to just get through it. Lambden spent the next several minutes standing in the hallway, hoping desperately that no sheep would walk by, as the towering moose, the sleep train's ever-effusive tour guide, babbled on about the Sleep Crew's unending devotion to innovation. Until, at long last, she seemed to be reaching her point.
And that is why tonight we are thrilled beyond measure to welcome you to board our critically acclaimed, unforgettable, legendary.
Suddenly, the door to room 27 burst open, and the math club members streamed into the hallway. The towering moose's voice was drowned out in the commotion.
We just know this will be a life-changing evening for all.
Lambden held the card close, but he couldn't make out the moose's words until the students were gone down the hall, heading out the doors.
Do be sure to arrive on time for boarding. We don't want to leave anyone behind, now do we?
Boarding what? What are we boarding? Mr. Hoofwilder clomped into the hallway after everyone else. He stopped short upon seeing Lambden, looking utterly despondent, near the water fountain.
Lambden, are you all right?
Yes, I'm fine. Have a good night, Mr. Hoofwilder.
Yes, you too.
Lambden grumbled to himself all the way home. He considered playing the card as he walked, but he kept being greeted by passing friends.
Hey, Lambden.
Howdy, Lambden.
No, he'd wait until he reached a quiet place to listen to the card for a final time. It was bedtime by the time he got the chance. Lambden let the card play, splayed open on his bed as he brushed his teeth, fluffed his wool, and changed into his pajamas. As he made his way back to bed, the message drew to a close.
To welcome you
Finally.
to board our critically acclaimed, unforgettable, legendary.
Huh? Lambden blinked rapidly. What? No. He grabbed the card off the bed. He snapped it shut, then flapped it open again. No, come on. He shut the card and reopened it. This time, there was nothing. The card was silent. Lambden glanced at the window in his bedroom, almost wistfully, hoping, embarrassingly, that a sleep crew employee would breeze through it. Someone he could question and pressure to give up the goods, buddy. But all he could see through the window was a sliver of moon against the ink blue sky. Lambden was alone. The card in his hoofs betrayed nothing. He slipped it into the pocket of his pajama pants. There was only one thing left to do. Lambden went to his bed and peeled back his pillow. The magical button placed there by the sleep crew many moons ago gleamed in the dim light. It is practically a law of nature that when a young sheep is presented with a magical button, he will press that button. Lambden reached out a hoof, here goes nothing, and pressed the button. A great swirling cloud streamed upwards. The cloud encircled Lambden, blotting out his bedroom. It wrapped him in rushes of warmth, alternating with bursts of frigid cold. There was a great whooshing sound as the cloud swirled faster and faster. Lambden had the sensation of being weightless before falling downward swiftly until he hit solid ground. Ow. Lambden was no longer in his bedroom. He staggered to his feet, shaky from the fall. He was in a dark place, so dark that his eyes took a time to adjust, even from the dim light of his bedroom. As they did, his imagination took hold of him. He could be anywhere, couldn't he? The sleep crew had sent him all sorts of places. Who knows where this mysterious vehicle might be parked? If only I could have heard the rest of that card, he muttered. But as more of his surroundings came into focus, Lambden felt his heart lift. He was in a tunnel. He could see a soft glow of light coming from around a bend in the tunnel. He set off after it. Lambden rounded the corner, and the light warmed with every hoof step. A lantern came into view, then another. Soon, the whole tunnel ahead of him was lit up. Lambden grinned, because he could see now what the card had intended to tell him.
All aboard. I repeat, we are now boarding.
The towering moose was just 50 yards away, ushering sleepy passengers aboard the sleep train. Lambden exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding in. A wave of relief washed over him. He did not have to board a hot air balloon or a tugboat or a trolley or some newly invented contraption. It was his beloved sleep train.
Mind the gap. There you go. Nice to see you this evening, Clifton. Oh, Gertie, I love those slippers. Winslow, leave the kite at the door, my dear.
A line of animals, many of whom were yawning and leaning on one another, shuffled aboard.
Good evening. Watch your step. We hope you enjoy this retro sleep experience. It's a throwback to simpler times.
The towering moose seemed to be reassuring the passengers as they ascended the train steps. Lambden heard a few grumbles here and there.
Aw, man, I really wanted to board a helicopter. Yeah, I can't believe it's just a train.
But Lambden didn't need any special branding or encouragement. He couldn't wait for this. Soon, it was his turn to board.
Lambden, my dear, you are looking very serious about your sleep tonight. We at the Sleep Crew hope you enjoy the spectacular journey that awaits. We're calling it Sleep Train Classic.
Lambden nodded gratefully and put a hoof on the steps.
Oh, Lambden,
the moose trilled.
I do need to get your code.
Lambden froze in place, one hoof on the steps and one on the train platform. A lump formed in his throat. My code? A shadow fell upon the towering moose's features.
It was provided in your card.
My card? Lambden felt a flash of annoyance as he remembered the rambling message.
Lambden, dear, I do need your code in order to allow you to board.
The line had lengthened behind Lambden, and he could hear the animals murmuring.
What's the holdup?
He doesn't have his code.
How does he not have his code? It was in the message.
I've never needed a code before. The towering moose's eyes went wide, and she lifted a hoof towards a large red button on the side of the train. Wait, hold on.
Lambden, our Sleep Train Classic journey is for a select group. If you don't have your code...
Her hoof moved closer to the red button. This is ridiculous. It makes no sense. Why should I need a code? I've been a regular rider for years, is what Lambden wanted to say. Instead, he said, my card won't play. He reached into his pocket and withdrew the card. The moose slowly drew her hoof away from the red button. She took the card from Lambden and opened it.
Lambden,
she said, furrowing her brow.
How many times did you open this card?
6? No, 7. I opened it 7 times.
I see,
the moose said. She moved her hoof back towards the red button. But it wouldn't make a sound after the 5th time, and I couldn't hear the code because...
Why didn't you say so? There must have been a bug in your card message installation process. It is guaranteed for 7 full listens. and you know we always stand by our guarantees. Welcome aboard, Lambden. Please mind the gap.
Inside, Lambden made his way down the aisle, smiling as he took in the familiar sights and sounds of the train's interior. He passed a row where a turtle snoozed in a seat, beside a mouse energetically fluffing her pillow. There was an opossum curled up in a seat next to a deer perusing a magazine. Lambden breathed in the fragrant scent of lilacs, drifting from Delilah the rabbit's mist machine. Lambden found 2 open seats towards the back. He sat down in the aisle seat and heard a squeak beneath him. Oh no. He hopped up and saw that he'd sat on his seatmate, a small, furry shrew.
You tried to take me out, but you failed.
It was completely unintentional, I promise. I'm sorry, Lambden said, taking the window seat after inspecting it carefully.
I shall live another day.
I regret making you think otherwise. There was little time for this awkward exchange to continue. The train eased forward and rumbled through the tunnel.
Fuzzy, weighted, or spider silk knit?
Martleby, the porcupine who distributed blankets on the sleep train, stood in the aisle with a neatly folded pile of linens.
Fuzzy.
The shrew said. Martleby handed the shrew a fuzzy blanket, which she wrapped around herself with great drama. Weighted, please, Lambden said. Moments after he pulled the blanket around himself, sinking into his comfortable seat, he heard,
Guess. Hello. Drink up that gorgeous sliver of moon and enjoy our first performance of the evening just outside the windows to your right.
Lambden saw that the train had left the tunnel, and they were now traveling through a beautiful countryside. The sliver of moon gave off little light, but as the train slowed to a stop, he could see the silhouettes of 3 figures.
What could it be? I love surprises.
All at once, 3 tiny wisps of light appeared near the ground. Matches, Lambden murmured. The unseen match lighters used the tiny flames to spark bigger ones, candles inside lanterns. Now he could see 3 rats, each in the glow of a lantern encircling a small stage. And now 3 performers were lit up, too.
What are they? Are they flamingos?
Lambden startled as the shrew scurried up to sit on his shoulder.
This is the least you can do after nearly crushing me.
I suppose that's true, Lambden agreed, as the shrew settled in to get a view of the storks. There were 3 storks who began making figure 8s on their roller skates, weaving past one another. Lambden relaxed further into his seat as he watched the storks bob their heads, their long, slender beaks stretching to sharp points. Their spindly legs looked as if they'd get tangled up like wires as they spun and wove past one another. But the storks were surprisingly graceful on their roller skates, and Lambden could see serene, sleepy smiles on their faces in the dim glow of the lanterns.
So peaceful.
Lambden felt the shrew curl up on his shoulder as the train lurched forward and slowly glided away from the storks. Lambden's eyes drifted closed as the sleep train moved smoothly along the tracks.
Guess. Hello. I do hope you are enjoying this classic journey on our flagship sleep vehicle. Don't let those eyes droop closed just yet. Next up, we've got something that is sure to lift your spirits.
Lambden kept his eyes closed, breathing in the light scent of lilacs, letting his mind wander along with the soft music piped in through the speakers, dotted throughout the train's cabin. He was nearly asleep when he heard,
Wow, magical. I wonder how they do it.
He eased his eyes open just as the windows of the sleep train finished expanding to many times their original size. The dim lights inside the train's interior went out, and the passengers were plunged in darkness.
Oh,
I can't see my claws.
Now Lambden could see the whole countryside, darkened but faintly visible with the star and moonlight from above. His breath caught as he got a glimpse of something bright, glowing warmly, drifting up from the ground. It was like a beautiful crimson gem against the night sky, in the shape of an upside-down teardrop. The train slowed to a stop, and there were suddenly many more of these glowing shapes in various colors gliding upwards towards the moon.
how darling. Magnificent.
Hot air balloons, Lambden whispered, a smile settling on his face. On his shoulder, the shrew was out, snoring quietly, her little heart thumping in rhythm with the music. Outside on the ground stood a raccoon wearing a newsboy cap on his head, deftly lighting each balloon with a torch before they lifted up and away. It was a marvelous sight, these lit from within baubles floating against a blanket of night. They moved so lazily, yet unerringly upwards. Lambden felt his heart slow its pace. Sleep would come soon. Murmurs traveled through the rows of passengers, and they dropped off to sleep, one by one, as the train moved away from the balloons, and the darkness became near absolute.
Yes. Hello. Thank you for joining us on this throwback journey. Those who are still awake, we've got a special treat for you approaching on our right side. This talented trio is nearly impossible to book, but thanks to a last-minute cancellation on their packed concert schedule due to a praying mantis infestation, they agreed to squeeze us in.
The train rolled to a stop alongside a raised wooden platform on stilts, lit up by a large spotlight above against the dark countryside beyond. 3 slender lizards wearing dark sunglasses swayed with the music flowing from their instruments.
Guests, lean back and drift away to the soulful tunes of the groovy geckos.
Lambden sighed as his seat automatically reclined far enough that any remaining tension vanished as the smooth, lilting jazz filled his ears, mixing with the shrew's soft sleep sounds from his shoulder. He gazed out the window, his mind hazy. He watched the geckos, swinging slightly with the beat. They appeared to be unaware of their audience, as if they'd been playing for a long time already, long before the train rolled to a stop beside them, and they'd be playing long after it was gone. They were completely in the pocket. Lambden closed his eyes, focusing solely on the music. It had a pattern to it, didn't it? A pattern the geckos knew by heart, the rules of which they knew so well they could get away with breaking them. A pattern. Yes, Lambden mused. There was some kind of geometry to it. Some kind of math. His mind wandered, following the pattern of the music as it dipped and darted, taking detours and scenic drives, but always staying true. Then, taking a detour of its own, Lambden's mind quieted. Lambden woke to movement beneath his head. Huh? He sat up, blinking. It took him a moment to orient himself. He was in his own bedroom. He glanced at his shoulder. The shrew was gone, likely waking up in a burrow somewhere. Lambden turned himself over to pull back his pillow, at the same time that a frog crept out from beneath it and hopped down from his bed. Hello? What are you?
All done. Should be good to go for this evening,
the frog said, making a beeline for the open window. The frog was olive green and wore a tiny, fitted sleep crew uniform. What should be good to go?
Your new button.
Wait, hold on. What's the button for? What are they making me ride now? The frog scrambled onto the windowsill.
Hey!
The frog gave Lambden a quick, apologetic glance over his shoulder and hopped away, out of sight. Lambden grumbled to himself and peeled back his pillow. There, glittering in the morning light, was a shiny new button. It was simple and round. It gave away nothing. It could lead to anything. Lambden shook his head and chuckled to himself. The sleep crew might have odd methods, but he couldn't help but be grateful. He had just had the best night's sleep of his life. Lambden stood up, stretching and yawning, then headed off for school and maybe math club. Maybe. I hope you loved the story. Little Stories for Tiny People is written, performed, and produced by me, Rhea Pector. My in-house tech director, Peter Kay, runs my website and puts my stories on the internet for all of you to enjoy. Thank you to my Little Stories premium subscribers for making it possible for me to keep sharing my stories with children around the world. You too can join or gift a subscription by visiting littlestoriespremium.com. Thank you to Brooke for the super important reminder message at the beginning. And thank you to the many premium subscribers who supplied sound effects used in this story. Thank you to Lenora, Autumn, Theo, Riley, Ruby, Emma, Julia, Knox, Stella, Ted, Posey, Lana, Kai, Veronique, and Noah. And thank you, as always, for listening in.